The mysterious power of the private irrevocable trust. That was the vibe and the energy that was showing up today during our private study session that we do every 2 weeks as part of the Trustee Network, which is one of the private member associations that we run here at the Freedom Studio. And as it happens and has been happening during many of our sessions, this mysterious power of the private trusts was revealing itself. It was kind of winking at us, saying, now you're getting it. You're starting to put it together. You're starting to see the picture. The funny thing is private trusts, it isn't even really that much of a big mystery. The only reason it's mysterious is it's simply not taught as part of mainstream education. But it is accessible. It's not truly occulted knowledge. It's not truly hidden, locked up in a box in that sense. But it is relatively hidden because it's simply excluded from pretty much all mainstream education, even higher education. Which is part of the reason why at the Freedom Studio we focus so much on teaching about trusts and about other topics that are considered occulted knowledge, like natural law. Natural law, trust law, equity. And trust is a big part of it. I do think we are living in a time when the power of the trust, the value of learning how to establish a trust, how to create one, how to operate a trust as a trustee, or even in a non-trustee role. In my opinion, this is all going to explode out there and become maybe not mainstream, but it's going to become much more widely known. At least if I have anything to do about it, if I have any say in the matter, which I feel very strongly that I do, and I feel it's very important to keep putting it out there. So in the Trustee Network, which is, like I said, it's one of our private member associations. It's still a relatively small group, and we typically get about 10 to 15 people showing up for a study session. We're really just unpacking how powerful the trust is. Now, if you're not familiar at all with the trusts, that'd be a little surprising, but if you are, you may just be very generally aware of what a trust is. Kind of like terms that you may have heard, like trust fund baby or antitrust. It's funny how in the mainstream, whenever trusts are brought up, it's usually in a negative connotation. That's a coincidence, right? So you may even have a negative association with trust. But, however, you may also have a neutral association. You may be open to it, or you may have even some experience with trust. More likely than not, statutory trust, meaning trusts that were set up for you by an attorney. What I'm talking about, the private irrevocable trusts, focus on the word private. Okay, so first of all, if you absolutely don't know what I'm talking about, what is a trust? We should probably start with the basics. I'll give you a hint. Trust relationships happen all the time spontaneously in many of our interactions. It's just most of them are what's called an implied trust. An implied trust means that a trust relationship exists, but it wasn't formalized in any way, such as through a document. An express trust is a trust where it's expressly written out and created, like a contract or an agreement. And a trust is a type of contract. It is an agreement. The way a trust operates is you have two parties that come together to establish something, establish an agreement for the benefit of a third party. Okay, so two parties come together. They could be men and women, families, organizations, other trusts. So two entities, if you will, two people or two entities come together, at least two, and they establish a relationship and establish control and management of some assets, some property, what's called the res of the trust. Something of value to be properly managed and stewarded and maintained for the benefit of some third party. Okay? So the first party is called the grantor. The grantor is usually the party that owns the assets that are going to be put into the trust, some type of property. So for example, if you have a home, a family home, maybe the family home is right now in your title or it's in someone's title. They personally bought it, had a mortgage, they're on the deed. Okay? So, but they now want to convey that into a trust. So they would be called the grantor, also called the creator of the trust or the settlor. The second party, and there could be more than one, is called the trustee. The trustee is the one who receives the property on behalf of the trust. Now, they don't own it in the same way that the grantor used to own it, but they do have what's called legal title, which is basically they can control that property. They can control the property and manage it and control how it's used. However, they're not controlling it. They're not receiving and controlling it for their own benefit. Nope. They're receiving it for the benefit of the third party called the beneficiary. Okay, so it's really a three-party agreement. However, only the first two parties are actually signers to the contract, the grantor and the trustee. The beneficiary doesn't have to sign to receive the beneficial interest. They just get to benefit from it. They may not have even had a say in the matter. They'll probably be made aware that they are a beneficiary, depending on how they benefit from the trust, from the assets, but they don't necessarily have to. So that's what a trust is. So why is this so powerful? Why should you care? You're probably thinking, Dave, I have so much going on in my life. Why do I need to worry about this trust? Well, let me tell you. There are two main use cases that pretty much almost anyone, you included, can benefit greatly from a trust when set up properly. Privacy and asset protection. Privacy and asset protection. So this is the magic, this is the power of trust that's been revealing itself every week as we dive in deeper and deeper to this topic. And if you feel bad or feel like, oh, I don't even know anything about this, don't worry, because I used to be the same way about 2 years ago. I learned about a lot of this very recently. Better late than never, right? And it does take some time to learn these concepts, to master trusts. It's not necessarily something you're going to pick it up all at once. That's why we set up the Trustee Network as an ongoing education model. So you can keep showing up. Again, we meet every other week, every 2 weeks. So you can keep showing up over and over again, and we keep introducing, we keep going deeper into the topics, and you can workshop everything. You can bring your specific use cases and scenarios. So most folks will benefit greatly from trusts to protect their assets, meaning whatever property they have either in their family or that they want their family to benefit from, including future generations, but also to operate in commerce privately. In other words, to build wealth, to build family wealth, to build family businesses or just businesses in general, and to protect those assets so they can't be taken away. If you ever ask anyone who's been the subject to a lawsuit and how stressful that is, or any kind of claim in court, I'm very fortunate. I have not been in that situation. Not that I don't think it could ever happen, because it can really happen to anyone. Especially, if you're doing business, if you are conducting business, there's always an opportunity for someone to come along and make a claim. Okay, that's just the nature of the public. But just ask someone, maybe this is you. Maybe you've been sued or are being sued, or someone's making a claim that you owe a debt or an obligation, and they're trying to collect that by coming after your property. The house that you bought, the vehicle, other assets, business property, equipment that you may have in your business, if it's business property. The beautiful thing about the trust is it can protect all of that property so you can continue to use it or continue to make it available to those to whom you want it to be available, such as your family, future generations, and not ever have to worry about someone coming along and taking it away. Whether it's through a court or by any other means. That's the beauty and the power of the trust. The main reason why this is so is when the grantor grants property into the trust, or when an exchanger exchanges property into a trust that's already been established, either way, either granting it in to establish the trust or exchanging new property into the trust, that property is now held in trust. It is not owned by you, and it is not owned by any individual. It's not even owned by the trustees. Not in the traditional sense. Not in the traditional sense. The trustees do have what's called legal title, which allows them to control and manage that property as long as they do it for the benefit of the beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries have what's called equitable title or beneficial title. They get to use it. If it's a house, maybe they get to live in it. If it's just a trust that's dispersing funds, they get to enjoy some kind of access to some funds. Or maybe it's something else. If it's a business that's benefiting from intellectual property, that business can continue to use that intellectual property. Okay? So you have this concept of a split title. Legal title, equitable title. They're split. So no one individual has full title, and no one associated with the trust, neither the trustees, nor the beneficiaries, nor even the grantor, none of those parties may be held liable for, how do I say this? If a claim is made against any of those parties personally, like let's say you're a trustee and you get sued by someone, the courts can't come after the property that you are a trustee of in that trust in order to settle whatever claim or obligation they have against you. You can't be held liable. Neither can the beneficiaries. Neither can the grantor for an irrevocable trust. Okay, so there is some nuance. So asset protection is probably the number one power that you unlock with a private irrevocable trust. Asset protection. Protection against all claims, lawsuits, judgments, liens, and so forth. Now there is some nuance to it, which is why it's important to study this and not just, frivolously or quickly try to throw something together, which unfortunately some people do. I don't recommend that. But it can be learned, and if you are diligent, you could probably learn everything you need in a few months. Maybe, I would say 3 to 6 months if you want to be reasonable. 3 to 6 months of consistent study, and you can learn how to properly create and manage a trust. Okay, and obviously there's a presumption that you're someone of high moral character, that you're going to dispatch the whatever duties and responsibilities you have morally and ethically. That goes without saying. And as long as you do that, as long as you abide by the proper best practices of how to create and manage a private irrevocable trust, then you're good. Those assets are protected. They are properly protected. Certainly, much more than would be the case otherwise. I don't want to say it's 100%. I mean, there is always a very small chance that it could still end up in court. But if you have everything set up correctly, even if the trust comes under scrutiny in a court situation, which you can prevent that from happening in most cases, the court is much less likely to pierce the trust as long as it's properly set up. Okay, the number one way the courts pierce through the privacy of these trusts is when there's something was done improperly. Okay, so we got to dot our I's and cross our T's. Okay, we got to get it right. And it is important to strive to do things correctly and not just rush through to get these things done. Okay. So asset protection is the number one benefit, and then we have privacy. Because the beautiful thing about trust is when they're private, they're private. That means it's not registered in the public. It's not like an LLC. So LLCs or corporations, they do limit your liability to some extent, but they're still in the public. They're still registered. They are essentially state creations, which means the state has a security interest in those assets. So whatever's in the LLC, whatever's owned by the corporation, the state indirectly controls it because they have a security interest in, because they're the ones creating all the LLCs and the corporations. But when you have a private trust, here's the golden ticket. Here's the part that might surprise you, other than how bright that sun is. Whoops. Let's see if I can put myself here. That might be a little better. So the surprising thing is the trust is completely private. Completely private. In fact, some trusts are so private they don't even have a bank account. Many do. It's not absolutely required. There are ways to work around that, and there are certain advantages. There are pros and cons to having a bank account associated with a trust, but it's private. So it creates a level of privacy. And that means that the way the trust operates, even if you do open a bank account, most of how the trust operates still remains private. The bank may need to know a few things: who the trustees are, who the fiscal agents are, what is their authority, what powers have they been given by the grantor and with respect to the banking. So yes, they're going to need to know a few things, but most of the declaration, most of the contract remains private and should remain that way. In fact, some trusts will levy heavy penalties for violating the privacy of the trusts. And that's how serious it is. And that means the way the trust operates is private. It means the funds that go into the trust are private. Now again, trust may still file taxes in certain cases, but that's okay. That's why you're with the Freedom Studio, so you can learn how to bring equity and discharge those taxes. That's a whole different subject. That's something we talk about here as well. So if you're new to the Freedom Studio and that kind of surprises you, it could be one more reason to get involved. So with equity, you can discharge it, but let's just say there are also strategies to reduce tax liability even for a trust, or even to eliminate it completely, depending on how you set it up, depending on how your ecosystem is created. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of that on this video. It's kind of like just to open the door that that's a possibility. But the privacy of trust is something very powerful because it's an unregistered, unincorporated organization. It's an unincorporated organization. And if it's a business trust, it's called an unincorporated business organization. Okay? So it's providing you with privacy. And aside from following and respecting a few basic rules that we can call them best practices of how to set everything up, you really have an almost unlimited ability of how you can set these things up. So it's super, super powerful. That's why I call it the mystery or the mysterious power of the trusts. Just because it sounds kind of cool. And yeah, it kind of opens the door. But the mystery is being revealed. This is kind of like the era of the big reveal. That's certainly, like I said, a big part of what we're doing at the Freedom Studio. And if you're watching this video, you can benefit from learning how to create and set up trusts to manage, to protect your assets, to operate in commerce privately, or some combination of that, to build family wealth, build generational wealth, as it's called, on top of that. You can benefit from it. Yes, you can. You just need to learn how it works. And that's the study part of it. And that's why the Freedom Studio is, more than anything, we are an education organization. We do have services, we do offer services, but more than anything, first and foremost, top of the list, we are a private education organization. Okay, and the trustee network is the specific private member association within our organization that is focused mostly on trusts. But really, if you join any of our member associations, you're going to get access to course material and learn how to set up trusts. The other great thing about trusts is it doesn't require you to have any particular status in the public. So a lot of people in this space are talking about status correction. Got to correct my status. Again, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And for those who want to benefit from certain aspects of that, that's going to be a great thing. And it's absolutely not required to operate in trusts. It's absolutely not required. There is no requirement to have any kind of status correction to properly set up these trusts. So that lowers the barrier of entry. In my mind, the real barrier of entry is your willingness to let go of negative programming around trusts and what it means, what a trust is. Going back to what I said about these concepts like antitrust laws and trust fund babies. So like your willingness to let go of the negative programming and to look past that and say, well, there might be something here. That's one barrier of entry. And the other is just your dedication and commitment to study. Because unlike hiring an attorney to help you create something, you're not going to do that in this case. You're not going to hire an attorney. In fact, we have a service at the Freedom Studio where we do help our clients to create a trust, especially if it's the first time they're doing it. And I won't even sell that service or offer it to anyone who's not already committed to study, who can't demonstrate a certain level of competence either from previous study or perhaps by joining the trustee network. Because I don't want to encourage the old paradigm where we just hire attorneys or others to do the work for us. And I get it that sometimes people are busy, or if it's the first time they're setting up a trust, they want a little bit of an advantage, a leg up. So I get that. And that's why we do occasionally offer that. But what I really prefer is, and this is again probably the biggest barrier of entry for taking advantage of trusts, is people are willing to dedicate time, even like 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week over a period of several months. If you're a family or a family business, just have someone from the family or business be the one, like, I'm going to take this is my project. I'm going to study this on behalf of the family, on behalf of the business. So not necessarily everybody has to go back to school, at least not in the beginning. But for that reason, a lot of people are going to be left out and they're never going to really be able to tap into this power. They're never going to really be able to take advantage of this. And if you think about it, think about what I said in the beginning, trust, when two parents come together to have children, that's a trust. Two parents come together and everything they do is for the benefit, maybe not everything, but everything they do for their kids it's basically a trust. Business is kind of the same thing. It's for the benefit of the end customer or whoever's supposed to benefit from the services of the business. But a trust is a little more specific than that, because a trust is, when it's expressed, the assets are specifically set aside for the purpose of benefiting the beneficiaries. And it's very explicit. And the trustees, of course, nobody is expected to work for free. So the trustees can be fairly compensated. And if it's a business trust, everybody can get paid for their work. No problem. But the actual benefit of whatever's in that trust is for the benefit of the beneficiaries. And beneficiaries can be people. They can be families, future generations, unborn generations. They can be a foundation, another trust, another private association, even a corporation. Really any entity at all, or several, more than one. So I'm pretty enthusiastic about this topic. I could go on and on, but the purpose here was really just to whet your appetite. The purpose really is just for me to share a little bit of the enthusiasm that I felt on the heels of today's study session, which we had a few hours ago, and just kind of open the door for you who might be looking for something more strategic, who's already thinking about how do I really become free? How do I activate sovereignty in a very practical way, in a non-combative, non-confrontational, non-controversial way, maybe less complicated than what how it's being positioned. That I don't need to file a bunch of stuff in the public. I don't need to go to court. I don't need to file a bunch of lawsuits to protect myself. I just need a simple way to do that. So if that's you, if there's something you cherish in life, there's something you want to protect for future generations, or even for folks who are around right now, then trust is probably something you're going to want to look at. If you have any kind of valued property or assets that maybe they aren't being threatened right now, but hey, you never know. You never know. You'd be surprised how easy it is to file a lawsuit. And it's particularly easy for corporations to do it because they already have the legal resources to do that. I mean, for them, it's almost like preparing a cup of coffee. That's how basic it is. For you, it might be a little more involved, but you never know. You never know. So it is a type of self-defense. It's protection of your assets. It's smart, and it's 100% lawful, and it's available. It's available now. So if that resonates with you, come join the Trustee Network. Other ways you can get involved, like I said, we do have a couple different memberships, and we also have free workshops once a month. The next one, depending on when I upload this video, the next one's going to be on July 13th, which is a Sunday. That's an introductory workshop. So if you want to jump in, that's free to attend. And we kind of go into a little more detail about this and other topics, including equity, natural law, of course. And it kind of brings you into our ecosystem. You could also join our online community. It's private, but it is free to join. We have our most thriving communities on Telegram. We have more than 4,000 members now. So that'd probably be a good place to jump in. If you want to just get your feet wet, you could do that even before you join one of our associations. So I hope you'll do that. If you stuck with me all the way to the end of this video, I would say that that's a good sign that this is meant for you. And I would just say jump in and take the next step. But either way, I appreciate having you join me on this journey, and I want to continue to bring you these very practical strategies and practical concepts that are going to allow you to continue to create more freedom in your life and to on, because freedom is kind of a means to an end to unlock your real purpose in life, what you really came here to do and what you really came here to achieve. So I appreciate you. I'm David Greenberg. I am the founder and the managing director of the Freedom Studio, and I look forward to seeing you in network. Take care.